Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Ivan Aristeguieta. Ivan is a former brewmaster and food technologist. Originally from Venezuela, he's lived in Australia and worked as a full-time comic here for over 5 years. He's won Best Comedy Award at Adelaide Fringe and Best Newcomer at the Sydney Comedy Festival. And last year he performed at one of my favorite comedy festivals, the world's largest comedy festival, at Just for Laughs. Welcome, Ivan.
Hello, welcome, Peter. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I'll probably clean up that intro.
Yeah.
So, first question: if you weren't a comedian, what would you be?
Well,
would you be a brewmaster again?
This is the thing. I think I compare things to falling in love. So when you have a job, you have a relationship with that job, and I think when you really fall in love, you have to like the good things and the bad things.
Okay.
So I loved everything about food, from cooking to learning the chemistry, the science behind the production in big mass, but I never enjoyed working in it.
Okay, so you like the knowledge.
I love the knowledge and the sharing and the history and the behavior of people around food, and planning and production and quality. But working in a company or working in a restaurant or working I couldn't do it. So the bad things of the job. I would never be a brewer again. I might brew for myself as I cook for myself, but If I wasn't a comedian now, I think I'll be a public speaker or a singer, or a host, or maybe in radio. I used to do radio in Venezuela and I loved it, and something related to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So performance.
Yeah.
So is it? I'm noticing something that's happening as I talk to funny people. Is this actually came up in the last podcast, this notion of being unemployable. That is the difficulty it is to have like a job, like a traditional job, a boss, and so on. That sounds a little bit like your experience with food.
Absolutely.
Tell me more about that.
There's a lot of freedom in comedy, and I have if I'm not a comedian, I know I can go back to teaching at least food safety, because I have got all the qualifications, including as a teacher, as an instructor. So my first job in Australia, my first decent job in Australia before jumping again to full-time comic, was teaching in the food industry about food hazards and hygiene and sanitation.
What's the biggest threat in food hygiene?
Well,
E. coli?
Historically, it's botulinum, but it's very well controlled. So E. coli, salmonella,
cross contamination, things like that.
Wash your hands. That's it.
so that's a short lecture.
I did a very long. It's just that. Wash your hands a lot.
Can I? Forgive the digression, but I'm sure the listeners will appreciate this. Can I figure out how safe it is to eat in a restaurant by the bathroom? Absolutely.
And you can figure out the hygiene of a person by the smell of like body smell or breath or how their shoes look like.
Right.
It's the same thing. If they cannot maintain something as simple as a bathroom, imagine
what the kitchen's like.
Yeah.
Oh, so that is a good indicator.
Absolutely.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely. Also
the food's better though too.
They're quicker. They don't take time in cleaning. When brewery, when you live in I say live because you actually have to stay there for a long time in a brewery, you train on pretty much the job of a brewer in a big brewery. Okay. It's cleaning. You have to I remember one of my bosses was a great boss. Every time you enter a room in a factory, look up.
Okay.
If the ceiling is not clean, they don't care.
I see. One of my favorite documentaries is a movie called Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Yeah, loved it.
It's a fabulous movie. I mean, visually, it's a compelling story.
Yeah.
You learn about sushi. It's also a movie about achievement, which is something that I'm interested in. It's actually part of this podcast. But there's a scene in there that says that great chefs are obsessed with cleanliness.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about discipline and perfection. And just bringing back all the segues back to comedy.
Yes.
Someone like Jerry Seinfeld is obsessed with cleaning jokes, trimming jokes. And taking out all the rubbish to make a perfect joke. Mm-hmm. Perfect joke in this particular case that I'm talking about, this particular topic. It's about each word in that joke is there for a reason, and it's not an extra word. So I remember one of my he was like the in Japanese terms, he was like more than a sensei, a shihan of brewers in the company I used to work for. And he was already retired, but he set up 4 big breweries in Venezuela, and he knows the history of how to plan a brewery before just from the blueprint. Okay. And then how to create a product and develop a new product. This guy was in his late 70s, and he did a master class for the brewers who were working in these breweries. And the first thing he said, the only thing you need to know is the brewing process is about purification. You start with the raw materials, you mix it, and every single part of the step, you take something out of it. Okay. So you remove something from the product until you have the final product that is very clean.
That's interesting.
So in comedy, it's similar. It's the same thing. When you start, you have an idea of a joke. You have rough. You write roughly what you want to say. Then you go on stage. You try it. You know these words were not needed. Then you think the idea is not presented the right way. So you have to change the joke. And then you realize that something that was a page at the beginning, it turned out to be 3 lines. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing.
So do you think that your background as a brewer and a food technologist has helped you as a comedian? Well, like the orientation that you have?
I think so. I think when you're a comedian, I had this conversation with a friend yesterday. Was catching up. I'm 38. He's 27. When he finished high school, he went straight to being a comic. He never studied after high school or had any jobs other than hospitality. Okay. And he's taken a break from comedy because it's no longer helping him or doing he's not in love with the bad things.
I see. Yeah.
Sorry, I took you. I'm sorry for that. Cross-contamination, you should toss that away. Okay.
He just was fiddling with the cap of my water bottle. He was telling me, I'm 38, I started doing comedy at around 27, when I was 27, so I already had life experience in uni, life experience in working in companies, and I think whatever you do as a comedian, you don't have to be a scholar or have a degree, but you have to have good life experience so you can talk about stuff and have a say. And I know there's a comedian here in Australia. I forgot his name.
okay, he'll come back. He's very young, but he has he has had a difficult life.
I see.
And his life experience is like 4 times my life experience, and he's like half my age. And he didn't go to uni, but he has gone through a lot of stuff. And when you see his stand-up, he's like, wow, there's a lot
to draw from.
Yeah.
So you moved here.
Yeah.
And that helped. That must help, right? Because that's a change in experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, comedy is about having a different perspective in things, and when you're from another country, you immediately have a different perspective, and that makes it a lot easier. Also, the language change helped me in my comedy. Because Spanish is my first language, and I started doing comedy in Spanish, and as it's my language, I have a lot of resources in my language, so I abuse them.
What's an example of that?
For example, I can talk too much on a subject and use a lot of descriptive words.
Okay.
And be very colorful in the setup of the joke without going straight to the point. In English, I don't have that much vocabulary, so I have to make my point with the limited vocabulary that I have.
Okay. So it's a constraint on your creativity.
So immediately my jokes are, from the beginning, they're trimmed compared to my jokes in Spanish.
I see. So it's this removing the fat. It forces you to trim the fat.
Absolutely.
Because you just don't come up with that much fat to begin with.
Exactly. I have to find a way to say the things with just that little vocabulary that I have.
Yeah, I see. Do you write your jokes in Spanish in your mind, or do you write them in English?
In English.
You do.
Yeah,
I see. So let's talk about this different perspective. And I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about freedom. Mm-hmm. Because earlier we were talking, let's talk about freedom first.
Yeah.
So earlier we were talking, so we were communicating via Twitter.
Yeah.
We were introduced via Twitter.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I don't have social media on my phone anymore.
Yeah.
And I was congratulating you for that.
Yeah.
And then asked you before we started why, and you said, I'm working on a show.
Yeah.
So there's this, to me, that's about, actually, the word freedom is an interesting word. I just purchased this app called Freedom. Uh-huh. And it blocks websites on your computer and phone.
Okay.
So it makes it difficult.
That's great.
To engage in distraction, when you're doing creative work in that way. So I want to talk to you about that. So you were saying, like, earlier you're saying, I go to a place for 3 weeks, and and you're in some place. You're obviously always writing jokes. I know that. Yeah. But you're also working on this show. This is for the upcoming comedy festival.
Yeah, the
Melbourne.
This festival season. So I start with that, like Fringe, then Melbourne Comedy Festival, then Brisbane Comedy Festival, Sydney and Perth Comedy Festival. Then I'm doing New Zealand Comedy Festival for the first time, and I'm also doing for the first time Edinburgh Fringe this year. So
great.
It's gonna be. This is the beginning of the season, and I'm putting together all the new jokes and giving it a shape, and it takes time. And I'm.
It's an hour show.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the format in Australia is a bit different than in America. Well, it's a lot different than in America, because Australia is a big country in area, but it's a small country in population. Mm-hmm. So you don't have that much audience to do the same show.
Oh, interesting.
You cannot. In America, you can tour a couple of years with 1 hour show and still have new audiences.
Okay.
In Australia, they have, for example, I think the Melbourne Comedy Festival is almost 30 years old or older.
Yeah, it's a great festival. I've been to it before.
And the audience in Australia knows about this, so they expect a different show every year, which is very hard. But at the same time, for example, my last year's show, I did it almost 80 times.
Okay.
So, of course, the last 10 were a lot better than the first 10. Mm-hmm. Because it was purified.
That's right.
But it's a great school to force yourself to do a different hour every year, and I have this guideline that I put myself: only 2 or 3 jokes I can recycle to the next show, as long as if they are very good to make a point, and as long as they embellish the new jokes.
Okay.
So they create a good setup for the new jokes to be around. I don't know if I said that properly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So let's go back. So freedom.
Yeah, freedom.
Social media. This was new. So I've been without social media on my phone for almost 2 weeks, a bit more than a week, and I find myself that I'm trapped in this thing. I wake up and I look at the phone. I go to bed. I've downloaded this app called Moments.
Okay.
And it tells you your screen time.
I've heard about this.
And one day I had 6.5 hours of screen time in one day. I mean, I've got a problem, because when I'm writing the jokes and I find this is my fifth started with lost in pronunciation, permanent resident, Chorizo Sizzle, Youthie. This is my 5th 1-hour show in English and my 6th 1-hour show overall. Okay. So I did one in Spanish before migrating. So now I have an idea when of course you have to try the jokes on stage in open mics and stuff like that. That's the way it is, and I believe in that. You cannot go with a joke that you've never tried before. But now I have a better sense of, I know this might work, I know this won't work. So if I'm writing something and the idea doesn't flow and I'm stuck,
okay,
I go to the phone immediately.
Yeah, it's like a coping mechanism almost.
Yeah, like I can't.
Yeah,
I'm about I'm starting to believe more and more about the theory of immediate gratification. Like, we get addicted to that because I'm not even trying hard. I'm already moving away from it.
Yeah.
So what I did was I have to get the apps. And I still go to my phone and look for the apps, and I find myself, wow, what an idiot. And now I'm on YouTube a lot more. I still have to fill that gap and now I'm going to download that app that you said,
Freedom
to block YouTube from my phone.
Right.
Because it's like when you're working now. I'm in the I relate working out with writing jokes. I'm working out just to create a discipline that when something hurts, you have to keep going, and it hurts when the joke is not flowing, and I have to keep going and make a way, because now I'm in a moment. I think comedians at the beginning, when you're an open micer, you can see funny things everywhere, and you write about that funny things, and you do jokes that are very obvious, and that's the proper way of doing it, just because you're starting. But then you eventually, after years of doing comedy, you're gonna run out of those things,
and the audience wants more than that, anyways. Yes,
and then the next level, since that's my next level, which is still beginner. Is okay, I just have thoughts and ideas. I want to explain how I see life now. Mm-hmm. And I have to find jokes. And I have to find a way of explaining that in a funny way. And that's where I get stuck. I have this idea. How can I make it funny? And that's what I'm not doing the push-up properly. I'm running away and looking at my phone.
I think, I think, first of all, listeners will probably resonate with that I can also, obviously I recognize it enough to purchase a solution, but so there's this work on what's called affect regulation, and so humans are generally trying to approach positive experiences and avoid negative experiences. There are exceptions. Exercise is an exception, and so on, and there's a variety of strategies by which to cope with negative experiences. One of them is avoidance. It's a very problem-focused way to do it. And so what happens is people encounter a rough patch in their creative work.
Yeah.
Right. So, you're just struggling with an idea. You're struggling with a joke. I'm struggling with a sentence, whatever that is. And then that's uncomfortable. And then people, you check your email, you pick up your phone, whatever that thing might be, in order to regulate your emotions.
You get another coffee. That's another thing. I stopped drinking coffee because I was drinking up to 5 coffees a day, and it's given me serious stomach problems.
I see. Yeah.
And I had to quit coffee.
It's this idea. I think people are too focused on willpower.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, what's clear to me talking to you is you're a professional. Like, everything about you suggests that you're a professional. The way you talk about your work, our interactions leading up to this, you were clear about boundaries. I need to leave at this time.
Yeah. You
have a busy life. You have things that you want to accomplish. And you probably have high self-control in general. You're a thin guy. You take care of yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you've been able to learn another language and become successful in another language. Yeah. You have high impulse control. Yet you struggle with it.
Yeah.
I have high impulse control. Yeah. Yet I struggle with it.
Yeah.
Willpower is like wildly overrated, I think.
Yeah.
It's that there has to be something else that is there that doesn't allow willpower to kick in.
Yeah.
Right? So whether that be a constraint, I'm becoming a believer in habits. How do we create habits? A lot of people who exercise, they don't do it because they make a conscious choice to exercise or not. It's just such a part of their...
Yeah, like brushing your teeth.
You have to do it. Like, if I can't floss at the end of a day, I don't think I can go to bed.
Yeah.
So people just get up and then they exercise.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to develop habits around my creative work, because creative work by definition is challenging.
Yeah. It's very challenging.
It's very.
And it's as challenging as working out for me.
I think it's hard. It's harder for me.
Because I have my day, I'm a comedian, I work at night. Mm-hmm. And my job is so most of the time, it's just thinking. Yeah. And conversations and getting inspired with the media as well, or just observing life, observing myself, analyzing myself. So it's very easy to. The more free time you have, the less freedom you have. Okay.
Tell me more about that.
Because if I have if I have something to do, like I've got a meeting and then I'm gonna record another podcast with a friend, and then I have a casting, and then I don't look at my phone. Okay. And then I go, okay, I'll be free at 4 o'clock. I will work out. Okay. Because I will feel free if I did what I wanted to do. Okay. But then when I have too much free time, I just keep pushing that wrinkle away from my side. But the wrinkle's gonna be there, and then at the end of the night, I didn't do my push-ups or my sit-ups. Right. It's very hard to develop habits when you don't have a structure in your life. It took me 3 years to figure out that I cannot have a gym. If I want to work out, I have to do it by myself. Okay. Because I travel 6-8 months a year, and I know there's gyms that you can. They're 24 hours and they're all over the country, but I cannot do that because it's a great excuse to say the hotel is here, the gym is in the other suburb. I won't go there.
So what do you do? How do you work out?
I have apps and I do it on the floor, and I have to. I've developed the. Now I know it's important, and now I'm closer to the habit, but I still don't have the habit.
You still have to make choices.
I still have to push myself and grunt before I do it.
Yeah, right. That's it.
And in winter I do it less. In summer I do it more, just because I feel more active in summer. But and it's the same with writing jokes. When you wake up that nerve, it's easier. But the nerve goes to bed very quickly if you don't work it out. It's like the muscle, like the writing jokes. I can think about jokes all day and I can take notes, but sitting down and writing the way I like to write a joke, different comedians have their own style, but I'd like to go, what is the premise? This is the setup. This is the punchline. I put in bold letters where the punchline is or when an act out is. And if I have 3 or 4 lines with no black or bold letters, I know I'm talking too much. So I have to trim it. I have to say it in a different way. For me to do that, it's like, it's the same as doing push-ups. It's like, I have to sit down, then I get the phone, then I get distracted. I still do it, but it's a bigger struggle. So developing the habit. So I do challenges. That's the only way I find myself.
So what do you mean?
So for example, let's do 100 push-ups a day for a month.
Okay.
And let's sit down and write 2 hours a day for a month. And then once that willpower muscle is working, now it starts to feel weird, like the flossing, like, oh, I didn't write any jokes today. Oh, I didn't do any push-ups today. Let's do double push-ups tomorrow, the 200 instead of 100.
Seinfeld has this thing, he calls it don't break the chain. So he has this thing where he wants to work on his craft every day, and he puts an X on the calendar once he's done it.
I break the chain so much.
Yeah.
Because it's exhausting. Like, once you have the show and you think about it and you do it for the first time, and then you go, okay, and the next day you're not writing, but you're thinking about the show, and then you change something in one joke, you change another thing in another joke, but it's no longer sitting down and writing more jokes, because I don't need to write more jokes once I have the show. I want to trim that show.
Yeah.
I want to purify it, but I don't have to write new jokes. I just have to fix it. So it's a different dynamic for me it's like, okay, I did the push-ups, now I have to do core.
Yeah. It's sort of like, if you're going to use a sports analogy, it's like the off season, you write your jokes, and then during the season you perform your jokes.
Exactly.
But you're not really practicing.
Yeah.
You're not doing the same things that you do in the off season.
Yeah.
And so the quality of your act is determined in the time leading up to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And another thing, because you read, this is my manager Chris. He has this analogy, like, you got the jokes are the bricks, but you have the second stage of writing a whole show is the mortar, is the cement, the how are you gonna put those bricks together, and so how are you gonna set them up, which jokes goes first, and what's the theme of the whole show. So you got the jokes and punchlines and premises and punchlines and premises and punchlines.
Okay.
But once you have that cement, that mortar,
yeah, sure,
will change and reshape the order of the bricks, and it will. It's like finishing, like the rendering of the show.
So I like to use the term mosaic.
Yeah.
Right. So they're tiles.
Yes.
And you put them, and then together they create this overall experience.
Because a single comment can change the whole idea of the show. On the order of the jokes.
Yeah, I see. And so you're saying that, so that's the next step.
Yeah.
And then you're honing, do you find yourself, you're honing the jokes more, or you're honing that order and emphasis when you're doing, like you're doing your 30 nights.
Yeah.
At Melbourne.
Yeah.
What are you doing more of?
The rendering.
The rendering of it.
Because the first festival will be more bricks, and a bit of rendering, and then I feel very comfortable with the bricks. Then the honing is the rendering.
And in Australia, what is Melbourne the top one? Like, because there's for people who aren't familiar with Australian comedy, it's sort of like throughout the year there's these different festivals, and every comic is developing a 1 hour show.
Yeah.
But what's the crown jewel? Like, is there a final one that you're shooting for, or no?
I don't want to have a favorite or a crown jewel, because Melbourne is the oldest festival.
Okay.
And it's
But it's not the
and it's the institution, like the proper institution. So of course, to do well at the Melbourne Comedy Festival is extremely important.
I see.
But the Sydney and Perth Comedy Festival, they're great festivals. They have a different structure, and the audience is as good as Melbourne audience. In all over Australia, comedy audiences are great. Adelaide Fringe is the second biggest performing arts festival in the world. So it's Edinburgh Fringe.
Okay, yeah.
And then Adelaide Fringe is the second. I think I'm making up this number, but I'm not far away from it. Okay. I think over 2,000 shows.
Oh wow!
All of like circus, comedy, theater, music, cabaret. So Adelaide Fringe, if you have a good mention on the Adelaide Fringe, you're competing a lot against a lot of different stuff.
And so you've won Best Comedy Award there.
That's a weekly. So there's 4 weeks. I got Best Comedy in 1 week.
Okay.
And then the best weekly comedy winner will go and get and compete against the best one. So I didn't win the best comedy of the year of that festival. It was yet. But I got one of the weeks, so it's great. Like, and of course there is a lot of effort and the quality of your show, but there is also a lot of luck. Because I know that judges and reviewers, there's so many shows. It's hard for them as well. And if you attracted them for some reason, it's just that's a bit of luck because they could have picked another show that night. So to watch.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The same show doesn't play out the same way every night.
Exactly.
So some nights are better, some audiences are better.
Yeah.
So you chatted about having a different perspective.
Yeah.
As a new, one is a new language, but then also a new place.
Yep.
You already probably had a different perspective given that you were a comic before this.
Yeah.
But so tell me about this. How having a different perspective is valuable in terms of being funny. For you.
I think I had this conversation. I have a good friend of mine in Sydney. His name is Dave Blusting. He's one of the few Jewish people that I've met in Australia. Because there's not that many in Australia compared to America. And I asked, he's a comedian as well, and he's also a producer and a writer. Now he's taking step off the stage and more into writing scripts. I asked him, okay, you're a comedian, you're Jewish. Tell me, why, if there is a list of the best comics of the past 50 years, why, without even thinking hard, in the top 10, there will be at least 8 Jewish comedians.
Yeah, compared to 5% of the American population or whatever.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And I go, why? And he said, because of perspective. As a Jewish, he says, we're a different race, different religion. The way the dynamic in our families is different. We have like our own independent community, and that makes us whatever we are, an outsider. And it's just that.
Yeah.
So they can see they live in 2 worlds.
Yeah.
So the world of their own community and the world in the city they live. So it's very important. Perspective. For example, I think writing jokes and writing a good premise when new comics approach me, hi, how do you write jokes? And I go, for me so far, because I know in 20 years I'll have more clear ideas like this brewmaster, the ones like this is how you do it. But so far, comedy, you have to make people see the world the way you see it, and that's the hard bit. Okay. Never assume people think because you think something's funny, they're gonna think something's funny. Mm-hmm. So maybe I think black bags, because I can see a black bag, they're funny. I'm not, but it's just an example. And then, but maybe you have a story about a black bag, or maybe you have something in my life or something that reminds me of black bag. And I have to put in a few words, a very quick premise, an idea, so I can you can see the world the way I see it. So you can go, yeah, black bags are funny. Anything can be funny, as long as you can see that right angle where it's funny, and that's the difficult bit.
Yeah, I think so. In the humor code, we talk a little bit about this outsiderness. It's common in comedy. I mean, I think it's valuable outside of comedy too. I think it can be valuable in science and in entrepreneurship and so on. But yeah, like, so fundamentally, the way I've thought about comedy is, what comics do is they point out what's wrong with the world, but they do so in obviously a delightful fashion. Yeah. And it helps if you're an outsider, because it's easier for you to see what's wrong with the world. Yeah. Because when you're an insider, this is just the way the world is. It's just normal and natural. Yeah. In that sense. But you're highlighting a thing that I haven't thought that much about is, as an outsider, how do I translate my different perspective? Yeah. How do I highlight the wrongness of this thing to you? And that obviously is challenging to do. It sounds really challenging to do. Because
we all live in our own personal world. So we can all be the outsider. And that's the beauty of comedy. Like, you can talk about the same subject, same topic, 10 different comics, and every one of them is going to have a different joke about it. Probably all of the 10 comedians thought about the first obvious joke on that topic first, right? And then they went, "Nah, that's not the joke, because everyone's going to do it." Was how I relate to this, and that's how your different world connects to the outside, to the common world.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by this idea of how persistence leads to creativity. So, there's this sort of, I think, a lay belief that, like, the creative people have these sort of moments of inspiration. Yeah. This thing pops into their head, the light bulb over the head kind of thing. And the more I study and engage in creative endeavors, what I realize is it's not that. It's this idea of, like, is this a solution? No, it's not. Is this a solution? No, it's not. And the early solutions, by nature of being early, are unlikely to be creative, right? Yeah. So the definition of creative I use is novel and appropriate. Right? So does it solve the problem? Yeah. And does it solve the problem in a way that other solutions don't? And to me, jokes, right? Good jokes are novel. They have to be novel, right? Because they have to be new. They're valued as new. Yeah. And they have to solve a problem. Yeah. Which is to make people laugh. Yes. And so, almost by virtue that the first joke you come up with, or the first premise and punch you come up with, is unlikely to be not a creative. Yes. Because it's just not novel. Because it's so obvious.
It's obvious.
It's so obvious.
But sometimes, most of the time, the obvious is complicated. And the creative is very simple. Okay. I remember, let's go back to the brewery. I actually learned a lot in that brewery. Another boss used to say, if the solution is complicated, it's not the solution.
All right, I'm going to write this down. If the solution is, say that again?
Complicated.
Is complicated.
It's not the solution.
Okay. I like that idea as a scientist. Yeah. We always talk about parsimony. Yeah. So when choosing between two solutions, you always choose the simpler one. Yeah. Right. So the answer to the question, you prefer the simpler one. Yeah. And that has a variety of benefits. But so in brewing, why is that the case? So,
for example, in this case, we were trying to make more mashes a day, more batches to get the most of the productivity of the brew house. Okay. And we did so many Excel spreadsheets and timing every day of what time you start the milling and what time this line is starting the mashing and what time that line.
It's a supply chain problem.
Yeah, and then you find yourself stuck, and then a lot of solutions will come like, okay, we have to do a spreadsheet of the spreadsheet of the spreadsheet, or we can get this. We can get one guy to sit down here and always switch this valve, or we can bring a whole team to just cut tubes and pipes and rearrange the whole. So all these solutions were great, but were very complicated, and this particular manager was obsessed on going, no, we have to find the origin. It's something very simple that we are not seeing. Keep thinking. Let's keep persisting. Keep persisting in a simple solution, because this is all too complicated. Like, we cannot have a spreadsheet of a spreadsheet of a spreadsheet, because it's not gonna stay for a long time. Like that habit is gonna break because it makes no sense. Or we can have one person doing this thing just for that because it doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Maybe the option of cutting the pipes is the best one, but it needs planning and stopping the line and. But
it's risky.
It's risky.
Yeah.
And we end up like trying hard and finding the easy solution, and he was right. Like, sometimes it's the solution is right there. We can't see it.
Did you come up with one?
No.
It would have been so great.
Actually, yeah, it would have been great. Actually, in that company, my job was I was the communicator, so I was great at getting information from workers, getting information from the lab, and communicating that to the big brewers, and because I'm good with people and telling jokes.
Right, of course.
I was the liaison officer.
Yeah, that's great.
I know. Yeah. Where were we?
Just this notion of persistence and creativity, and sort of
in a joke,
original, appropriate.
In a joke, like, that's why working with people, I always get a comedy friend, and we share. I have plenty of comedy friends that I can work with because they know my comedy, they know my persona on stage, and I know their comedy and the way they write and their persona. So sometimes I can't see it, and they go, "Man, it's just right there."
They can reflect back to you.
Say it this way, and I go, "Oh, yeah, you're right."
So give the listeners a feel for, like, what is your persona on stage? Like, what's an example of a joke that you might be working on, or that you feel good about right now?
It's about I'll still be the immigrant, especially in Australia. Especially someone goes on stage and with an accent they're not used to. When I did comedy in Montreal, they're Latino. We know you. You don't have to mention that. Yeah. But in Australia, it's like, oh, Latino, like South America. Tell us about that.
Well, when you're in Australia, South America is far away.
It's far away.
It is far away.
Yeah. And they're not used to our immigration, like our...
Yes.
And it's different. I like to be very positive.
Okay.
So when I know that so far my audience doesn't like... I like...
So you talk about the good parts of being an immigrant?
No, it's like making fun of Aussies in a positive way.
Okay. Like how?
Like for example, if there's have you seen any clips of mine on YouTube?
Yes.
Like the Bunnings sausage sizzle. So that's instead of saying you guys are idiots, you're eating something that is disgusting and tastes like burn and doesn't make any sense, I go, I'm becoming more Australian. I'm so proud. Now I like sausage sizzles, and I describe sausage sizzles in a positive way, but still saying
they're burning.
They're burned, yeah.
Right, yeah. That's sort of an interesting... I'm finding that more and more is this notion of the reversal.
Yeah.
It's a very common kind of comedy thing.
Yeah.
Where you just take this thing that's bad, and then you flip it.
Yeah.
In a way to make it good, or this thing that is good, you flip it and make it bad, right?
Yeah.
There's that thing. This is a comic, a buddy of mine, his name's Jonathan Giles, and he's a young comic, but he's a very smart guy, and he's a black guy, and he does this joke about, I'm starting to really feel bad for these white men.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just a really tough time to be a white man.
Yeah.
And so, and it's a very funny bit, and it's just a classic reversal.
Yeah.
Which is your first instinct is to just point out how awful white men are these days.
Yeah, but we've been talking about it all. That's a different perspective.
Yes.
Can I see this from a positive perspective?
Yes,
Can I see this from a negative perspective? That's another tool to have. Like, okay, I'm gonna change. Okay, this is not bad. This is actually great.
Yes.
How can I talk about it?
Yes, right.
For example, a joke that I'm working on right now is not finally polished. I started describing how terrible the situation in my country is in a positive way.
Okay.
I said last year was a great year for my country. Like we broke world records on hyperinflation.
Right. Okay.
And
yeah, I see.
like 2,000%. That's amazing.
That's pretty amazing.
We'll finally my city, Caracas, Venezuela. We finally made it to be the most violent city in the whole world.
Okay.
Take that, Honduras. And then I explained how the people say that first world country problems are a lot easier than third world country problems, and I'm not sure about that because third world country problems are very simple. Food, medicine, money to pay ransom.
Okay, right. Yeah, there's your rule of three.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if you're still alive, you celebrate and you dance salsa because no one killed you. First world problems are very complex and overwhelming. Human rights and global warming and animal cruelty, political correctness, racism, homophobia, transphobia, refugees, the environment, pollution, plastic bags. Should I hug people more?
Right, it's a nice...
If you make it at the end of the day, you celebrate you didn't kill yourself.
Yeah, right, that's very nice.
So, and I'm working on this joke and I get a feel... the connection, because that's another thing. Like you have to. Now I'm not connecting with Australia. I'm connecting with first world country people.
Yeah,
that's the difference that I'm doing this year. It's not just because you're Australian. I'm gonna talk about, hey, Bunnings. I know you. I've been there. I'm living this, and they go, oh, thank you. You understand Bunnings. This is not that many people get it. And now when I do that joke and I say you celebrate you didn't kill yourself, there is a laugh and a sense of, oh, thank you. Like
you get me.
We thought we were bad people because we had easy first world problems, and it's true. We have to think about this stuff. And a premise that is not ready, but third world countries, you're responsible to save yourself, and in a first world country, you're responsible to save others.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. So there's this level of responsibility that you have because you've made it.
Yeah,
so to speak.
It's first world country privilege.
Yes, I see.
And it's also a duty.
Yeah, there is this notion of what is the saying? With like great power comes great responsibility. Right?
With great privilege comes great responsibility.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that's a difficult joke. The first part of that joke, that bit, is hard to get right?
Yeah.
Because you got to be careful about punching down.
Yeah.
Right? So it's hard for progressive-minded people to laugh at Venezuela's woes, right, that exist. And so how can you make it that you make it okay?
Yes. Also, I get away with it because I'm from Venezuela.
That helps, yes.
And they go, okay, we're not laughing at you, we are laughing with you.
Yes, right.
So,
a couple quick things before we finish. So I know you're trying not to consume, you're trying to create.
Yeah.
That said, is there anything that you're reading or watching or listening to these days that really stands out to you?
Well, recently, the very fresh new Dave Chappelle shows on Netflix.
Okay.
That's the latest thing that is...
you thought they were really good?
Yes. Yeah. Also, the new Patton Oswalt special.
Okay.
And
So you're consuming comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm a fan of comedy as well. Like, I love it. Like in food, I like the theory. I like eating it. I like making it. Yeah.
So were you a beer drinker, or were you a beer drinker when you were
I am a beer drinker.
You're a beer drinker. So
Absolutely.
Similar kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't drink spirits much.
Okay.
Just beer and wine.
Well, in this country, you don't want to drink spirits because they're crazy expensive.
And the beer is really good.
It is amazing the price difference. I'm like, there's alcohol in both of these things, people.
Yeah. It's a bit expensive here.
It's absurd.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but it's a fast. I guess people, you know. Mm-hmm. Okay, last question. What's the secret to success that everybody knows, but few people can do?
There's so many definitions of success.
Yes, so I keep it open for
So the secret is to define what is success to you.
Okay.
Because sometimes you think you want the success of others, but you're not sure. It's like finding that problem. Like, make it simple. What does it mean to be successful?
Okay.
I love this question. This is the best question to start a conversation with anybody that you connect with, like a friend. Just let's have a beer and go, what's your definition of success?
Okay.
Because every single person has a different definition of success. For me, so far, success is to be able to. So this, for example, to have someone in my life that I can give love and receive love.
Okay.
When I left Venezuela, I had a friend who told me, why you live in the country? Because it wasn't as bad as it is right now.
Okay.
Why you live in the country? Like, you have a radio show here, you're doing comedy, like, you're someone here. And I went home that night thinking, what does it mean to be someone?
Okay.
And for me, to be someone, it's not about being famous. It's about, if you disappear one day, how many people
would notice.
Will notice, and will care about that. Uh-huh. So for me, that is success, to have friends around me. And as an immigrant,
mm-hmm.
to know that, like the other day, Perth Fringe just started. I'm not doing it this year. And a couple of producers and people who work around Fringe who are not close, but we hang out when we do the festival. One of them was worried, like, you're not here. Where are you? What's happening? Huh. So as an immigrant who's been in this country 6 years, to have people that care about me, mm-hmm. it's success.
I see. So what you're saying is...
Because my family's not here.
Right.
So it's creating that network, that... Because I've talked to... I don't know, there's a lot of books and interviews when people interview old people before they die, and they go, what would you do again? And apparently it's all about people around you, affection. Mm-hmm. It's not about the money they made. It's not about
their relationships. Yeah,
relationships and a very important one, the relationship with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what I hear you saying is the thing that most people can't or won't do is they're not clear about what they want.
Yeah.
And so they stumble around too much.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think that actually relates to the kind of, for instance, in the kind of creative work.
Yeah.
If you don't know exactly why you're doing it or what you're doing or what the output's going to be, it becomes especially hard to not pick up your phone.
Yeah.
When you're supposed to be working on it.
Yeah. That's my definition of success in a very personal way.
Sure.
People can have their success at work, in relationships, fitness, health, whatever.
But just to know what those things are.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's great. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, great. Thank you, Peter.
I appreciate you doing it. Thanks for fitting me in.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guest, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw next week for another fun, fascinating conversation on I'm Not Joking.